We are unable to hear him. That's why he can't share. Who else would like to? Okay, Roma is not done with the assignments. Who else? We have two more people, Harshini and Santosh. Okay. What about you, Harshini? Okay, no response. Okay, so what we can do is, Om, can you just share your screen and uh, I will explain your assignments. Okay, thank you. Okay, yeah. So this was the first assignment. What you have to do is you have to write IIFE, which is immediately invoked function expression. And what it does, it simply alerts hello world. So here is the code for it. As you can see, from line 7 to line 11. So there is a script tag, and inside script tag at line number 8, what we have written one function. And what kind of function it is? It's a parameterized function with one parameter whose name is message, MSG. And inside the function definition, what we have? We have one alert message, and what it does, it prints the message which is passed inside the parameter. Okay, so as you know how we invoke function expression, by encapsulating the function inside parenthesis, and after that calling the function immediately. That is why it's called as immediately invoked function expression. And at line number 10, when we are calling the function, we are passing the argument which is required at line number 8, and the message is hello world. Okay, so this was the first assignment. Home, can you open the browser? Yeah, as you can see, as soon as the HTML page loads, hello world is coming in the alert message. Okay, so this was the first assignment which you have to do. Moving on to the next assignment, assignment number 2. Okay, yeah. So in assignment number 2, what you have to do is you have to validate whether a email ID is a valid email ID or not. Okay, so here is the code for it. So what we have done is at line number 17, you can see one variable is created, email ID, right? And inside that email ID, we are keeping one valid email. Okay, and then at line number 8, there is a function, and it's a anonymous function, right? At line number 8, you can see it's an anonymous function. It doesn't have a name, but we are assigning that function to one variable so that we can call that function at line number 19, right? So what is the logic of validating an email? There is a pattern, as you can see at line number 9, if, and then there is a pattern which is to test the validity of an email. Okay, and then dot test is a function which can be used for regular expressions. And what do test do? Test will contain one parameter which is email, which is coming as a parameter to the function. Now we are validating at line number 9 that if it passes this regular expression, then return true. And there is a else block as well at line number 13. where it says return, else return false. That means if email ID is not a valid email ID, then return false. Okay. So what we have done at line number 19, there is text is this ID, and then we pass the email ID. It will show print the email ID, and then there is a text valid, and then we have called the function validate email, and we have passed the email ID, which is at line number 17 here. Okay, so that this function will return true or false, and alert will come whether the email ID is valid or not. Let's open this in browser. Yeah, so you can see is this ID, and then we have passed the email ID valid. It says a it was a question, and then there is answer true. Okay, so true means it's a valid email ID. Click on OK and go to the code. Yeah, let's change the email ID now, so that we'll make it invalid email ID. Let's save this and go to the browser. Now we refresh here. Yeah, as you can see, is this ID, there is a problem with this email ID because at the rate and dot cannot come together. There must be some text inside between them, right? So after validation, what it has returned, it returned that false, because email ID is not a valid email ID. All right, let's move to the third assignment. Okay, so third assignment was we have to validate a form and check whether the values are filled there or not. We have to check whether the fields are present or not, and that means all the fields are mandatory, and also we have to check whether the email ID is valid email ID or not. So here we will be reusing the code which we have used in the previous assignment. So you can see at line number scroll up. Yeah, at line number 6 to line number 12, Om has created one form, and what that form contains, it contains 4 input type text. That means 4 text boxes are there in which you can fill name, email, phone number and address. Okay, and then there is one submit button at line number 11, and on click of that button we are calling one function, and what that function is doing, that function name is validate fields. That means on click of this submit button we will call one function whose name is validate fields, which will validate our fields. Okay, and where is that validate fields function? It is at line number 16. There is a function validate fields. Okay, and inside that we have written conditions. As you can see, if document not get element by id, we are getting the element by id whose id is name. So first field at line number 7 is name. Okay, and we are checking its value and then its length. That means if we have typed some value inside it, and if its length is equal to 0, double equal to means it's a comparison operator. It is comparing whether the length of the value entered into the name input box is 0. That means nothing is entered. Okay, then what we are doing, we are making document of that element by id name and its style background equals to a color. Yeah, so what we are doing, we are setting the background color of name to this color hash ff 0000. I think this hash code is for red. Yeah. So similarly, we are checking the email, phone number, and address. So first of all, till line number 33 is the validations whether the person has entered something inside all the fields. That means it's a mandatory check first. We are checking all the mandatory fields. Okay. And then at line number 37, we are having the email part. Okay. So here we are validating the email, whether the email is a valid email ID or not. Okay. Yeah. And what we are doing at line number 34 is, before going to line number 34, as you can see in every if block from line number 18 to line number 30, we are incrementing a variable count. Okay. That means if any of these values is not filled, then we are incrementing it. And then we are checking at line number 34 whether the count is greater than 0. That means one of the fields is not filled. Okay, then we are simply giving an alert message that red marked fields are mandatory, because all the fields which will be empty will be, their background color will change to red. Okay, otherwise then that means all the fields are mandatory fields are filled. Then we are checking the email, validity of email. Okay, so let's see the output. Yeah, so first of all we are checking without filling anything inside the input boxes. We directly click on submit, and it says all the fields are marked red, right, because none of them was valid, and it has given a message red marked fields are mandatory. Let's press OK. Now let's fill the fields. Yeah, so when we are filling all the fields, it says all good. That means all the fields are mandatory fields are there, as well as email is also a mandatory sorry, email is also a valid email. Now let's change the email. Okay, yeah, so you can see it has passed the mandatory field check. That means all the fields are mandatory. Then it is checking the validity of email, whether the email is a mandatory email is a valid email ID or not. So since our email ID was not valid, we are not having dot, and dot after dot there should be one text, .com, .co, .in, whatever, .net. Okay, so it says email is also invalid. Okay, so this was the third assignment. Moving on to the fourth assignment. Yeah, so fourth assignment says you have to write one immediately invoked function expression, and you have to pass the three fields. That means age, name, and city of the person. Okay, so as you can see, from line number 7 to 11 there is a script tag, and inside that we have written one immediately invoked function expression similar to the first assignment, same syntax. Only thing is, there we were passing only one argument, here we are passing three arguments, because we are capturing the details of a person here. Okay, so age, name, and city, so all the three fields are present, and as soon as we will run this code, it will alert with the details of the person. As you can see here, it says name is of, then the age, and living in, then the city name. We all these three parameters inside the double quotes we have passed through the parameter. Okay, so this was the fourth assignment. Anyone has any doubts in the assignments? Any questions? Anything? No? Okay, so Harshini says no. Thank you, Harshini, for the response. Yeah. So no questions. Thank you, Om. Thank you very much. All the assignments looks good. Good work. Okay, now let's start with the today's session. Yeah. So today is the second session of our web development course, and it will be on advanced JavaScript. So today agenda is quite small. We'll go through two topics, but all the two topics are very, very important. So first one is inner functions and second one is closures. So let's start with inner function. So I go here, I have one file. Yeah. So till now we have studied about functions, right? Now what we can have is we can have a function inside another function. Okay. So how is this possible? Let's see. So what we do is we write one function. Suppose we take this function only, function f times. Okay. So f times is a function. So what f times will do is it will contain some inner functions. Okay. And yeah, one more thing I would like to tell you is before going to inner functions is you have studied about a function in last session as well. But what were they? They were properties of a function. Like we have this dot get name equals a function, right? This was also a function. Okay. Suppose there is a var name equals ACADGILD. Okay. And let's take this also as this dot. And here it returns this dot name. Okay. So here also what we are doing, we are writing one function inside another function. Okay. But what you see here is not a inner function. Okay. Why? Because this function was a property of this function. All right. So when you create an object of this f times function, let's say where obj1 equals new f times, okay, then you need not to do anything. Okay, because object is created and to this object we got two properties by default. What all are those two properties? One is name and another is this get name function. Okay, so you need not to do anything, you can directly access it by obj1 dot get name. Okay, so if I see, if I have put an alert here, okay, I save this and I open it in browser. Yeah, as you can see it prints a cat guild, right? It is working fine so far, right? But as I told, this is not an inner function, this is a property of f times function. Okay, so inner function is not a property, it's a nested function. That means it is a separate function but it is enclosed inside another function. How it is, let's write. Okay, and I remove this as well. Now we have one function. Let's call it as outer function. Outer function, let's say, so that we can relate the name outer function. Now what we can have is, we can have another function inside this function, and that function will not be a property of this function. All right, so we will be writing like this only. So what we will do is, we will create two functions. Let's say I write function and I say f times of 3. Okay, f times of 3 is a function, and what it does, let's say it takes one parameter. Okay, suppose I can say it a param, and what it does, it returns 3 times of that parameter. All right, so basically this function can give you 3 times of a parameter. If you pass it 3, it will return you 9. If you pass it 4, it will return you 12. Okay, similarly what I do is, I create another function which is f times of 5, suppose. Okay, and it also accepts one parameter, and what it does, it returns the multiplication of 5. Okay, so now we have created two inner functions. First one is f times 3, second is f times 5. All right, and then we enclosed it inside one outer function. All right, now the question arises, how will we be able to access these two functions, f times 3 and f times 5, right? Because they are no more a property of outer functions. If they were a property of outer function, then it was very easy, just like we did in the previous example. It was very easy, right? Create the object of outer function and access the properties. But now we are not having these two functions as the properties. These are separate functions inside another functions. This is simple nested functions case. Okay, so how to access these functions, these two functions? Let's see. So what we do is, we create one object. Let's say where obj equals new object. Okay, so capital object is a parent of all the objects, so it will create one object for us. All right, now what we will do is, we will assign these two functions as a property to this object. How? I will say obj dot f times 3 equals f times of 3. Okay, so what I am doing here, I have added one property f times 3 to this object, and right side of equal to, you can see, is a function. This is a function name f times 3. So what this will do, this will assign this function definition to f times 3. Okay, and similarly I say the another function as well, f times 5 equal to f times 5. Okay, now what we got one object which is containing these properties, right? So now it is very easy for us that what we do, we return this object from this function. Okay, now every time a person calls this function, what it will get in return, it will get in return this object, and this object contains these two functions. Okay, so what I do is, I say I'll call this function, let's say where obj1 equals, I have to simply call the function, right? Now the question is for everybody. What difference can you see at line number 31 from this example to the previous example? There is a difference. Who can answer this question? Let's see how many are present here. Nobody? At least say no. Okay, so Om says he's not getting. What is the difference? What about others? Okay. Santosh also said no. Roma and Harshini? Yes or no? Okay, Roma also says no. Okay, yeah. Yeah, fine. Yeah, that looks good. At least everybody is replying. So I'm also getting that I'm not talking to myself. I'm talking to somebody else, right? Yeah, no problem. So the difference is in previous example at line number 31, we have written new. New of that constructor function name, right? But here we are not writing new because this function which you can see here from line number 13 to 29 is not a constructor function, right? That means you cannot write new of outer function. You can write, but there is no significance of writing new of outer function. Why? Because it will create an empty object for you. Why empty object? Because there is no property which is assigned to this particular function. You cannot do anything else. But when you are doing at line number 31 as where obj1 equals new out this calling this function, so what happens when you call a function? It does some processing and then returns something, right? Similarly here we are when we are calling this function, we will get something in return. And what we will get? We will get this line number 28, return obj. And what is returning? It's returning a object. And what this object contains? It contains two functions. First is f times 3 and second is f times 5. Okay. So what obj1 will contain? Obj1 will contain this object obj. Okay. That means when obj1 is containing obj, it means it can access these two functions now. So that means I can write obj1 dot f times of 3. Suppose I pass 10 and then I put it inside a alert function. Okay. So what it will do? It will call this f times function. It will go here and then it will take this parameter 10 and it will replace this parameter by 10. That means this parameter is now replaced with 10. And what it will become? 3 into 10, 30. This function will return 30 and that 30 will come here. It will be replaced here as 30 and it will print alert 3030. Okay, let's control Z everything. Yeah, and similarly I call, okay, first let's see what is the output, whether it prints 30 or not. I save this and I go here and refresh. Yeah, it prints 30. It's working fine, right? Let's say okay and call the another function as well. So I say alert of, what will I alert? Obj1 dot f times of 5, and to this 5 I enter 5. That means I want to get the multiplication of 5. Okay, so what is 5 into 5? 25, right? So let's save this and see what is the output here. I go here and refresh. So first alert says 30, the same output, and if I press OK, at the same time second alert is coming which says 25. I press OK. All right. So this was the concept of inner functions. We have created two inner functions and then returned it. Okay, so Om is asking, means outer function is like a class? No, outer function is still not a class. Outer function is just a function which returns something. Okay, currently it is acting as a class actually, because it is returning an object to you, but you cannot create an object from it. You cannot write new of outer function. If you are trying to relate it to Java, right, you cannot do new of outer function, because in Java you create some object using new operator, right? Yeah, but it is returning object. So it's a simple function which is doing something and then returning a value. Here value is a object. Okay, yeah, so let's proceed. We have done the inner function. Now let's moving on to the next concept, which is of closure. So closure is pretty interesting concept. So if I explain you in real life what is a closure, uh, if I tell you from a real life example, okay, Om is asking again a question. It says if it was not returning any object, then it's a normal function, right? Okay, if it was not returning any object, there was no significance of this function. You cannot do anything with that function, right? You cannot call any property of it. You are not getting anything in return, right? Then it's just garbage. It's not doing anything for us. It's just eating up your memory. Okay, yeah. So anyone else has any questions? Yes or no? Okay, Santosh says no. Okay, so I assume nobody has any questions. Now we are moving to the next concept, which is closures. So what is a closure? Let's go from a layman's language and from a real life example. Everybody has attended college, school, graduation, post graduation, anything, XYZ, right? So let's take a college. So what happens when you entered the college? Suppose let's take example of 4-year engineering. You started engineering course, right? You took admission, you went there, you started like from the first day one, you started going to college, you started studying something, and then you spent a 4 years of time in the college, and in that 4 year span you made some friends, you made some links with these friends. You can say these are links, right? You are linked with your friends. Then you made some links with your teachers, your lecturers, right? So you made some friends, you got to study there, you made some friends, you made some links, you made some links with lecturers, teachers, right? And then after 4 years you passed out of that college, you completed your graduation, you came out of the college, right? So in that 4 years of time you were part of one course, right? But after the 4 years you are no more part of that college, right? You are no more part of that college, right? Till the time you were in that college you were eligible or you were allowed to access all the resources of your college, right? All the resources as in whatever is accessible, not the private records, all the available resources. You can use the computers in a computer lab, you can go and attend a class, right? But after that 4 year span you cannot do that, right? Because you are no more part of that college, right? But even after that 4 years, what you still have, you still have the links which you made in the 4 years of span of your graduation, right? You cannot access your computer lab when you are your graduation is completed, right? But still you can call your friends, you have their phone numbers, you can talk to your friends, right? However they were your friends in the college time, but still you are still connected to your friends, right? You can still call your friends, you can still call your faculties, you can still talk to your faculties, you can call them, right? Because you made some links in your graduation. So these links which you have created, these are accessible even after that 4 years of span, right? So the same thing when implemented in technology, that is called as a closure. Okay, so how it is implemented in terms of technology? What happens when a function definition starts? When function definition starts, a memory gets created for all the variables inside that function. Okay, so let's write the code. I'm removing this one. Okay, let's comment this out and start from here. So let's write one function. Let's see if there is an example. Okay, I simply write one function xyz. Okay, and inside this what I do, I create one variable. If you see here, this variable is also a private variable. This is not a property. Okay, let's say a name. I say ACADGILD. Okay, so what happens when JavaScript run this code? It will come at line number 38. It will enter the function definition. It will see that there is a function, there is a variable declaration name as ACADGILD. What it will do, it will create a memory block for name. And what it will contain? It will contain a string which is ACADGILD. Okay, and then it comes out of the function, and then it checks if there is a invocation or a reference to this function. Okay, what it will do, it will at till line number 44, it will keep this name in the memory. Okay, that means the memory block is still there. All right, and when after line number 44 is crossed, what it will do, it will check whether there is still a reference to xyz function. Okay, it doesn't find any reference after line number 45. What it will do, it will remove the memory block of name from the memory. It will clear off the memory. Okay, that is called as a garbage collection. All right, now what I just said is, this is a normal flow. You entered into your college at line number 38. You are sitting in a computer lab at line number 40. You are accessing the computers, and then at line number 42, the 4 year span of 4 years of span is finished, and then at line number 43, you came out of the college. Okay, now this is cleared off, right? That means you haven't made any links in this 4 years of span. Inside this function from 38 to 42, inside these 4 lines, you didn't made any links. Okay, now that means after this function is execution is done, you are no more able to access this name function, this name variable. Okay, so it's not a closure. So what is a closure? Let's write, we'll make it a closure when what we do, we create one function get name. Okay, and what it does, let's say it alerts, what it alerts, let's say name is plus name. Okay, and then what I do is I return get name function. Okay, now if you see, if you look closely at line number 42, I created one function, and inside this function what I have done, sorry, at line number 42 I have to write it as a this dot get name, because it has to be a property of this xyz. Okay, let's see. Okay, we can do it without that as well. Yeah, and here I have to remove this braces. Yeah, so as you can see, I have created one inner function inside the outer function, and what this inner function is doing, it is alerting the name. And what was the name? This name was a private property of this function, right? It was not the public property. It is not accessible via object creation of xyz, right? So what I am doing, I am making alert of a private property inside my function, and then I am returning that function. All right, so that means even after this function has returned, even after the scope of this function is returned, still this name ACADGILD will be there in memory. It will not be cleared off. Why? Because we have returned a function, and what that function itself inside is having, it is having a reference to this name. At line number 43, if you can see, at line number 43, we are having a reference to a private variable of xyz function. Okay, so that means when an inner function gives you the access of a private property of a function, and when we return that particular function from outer function, this forms a closure, right? Even after the execution of xyz is over, you still have the access to the private variable of xyz function. Okay, that means this get name, who is this get name? This get name is your friend to whom you can call even after you have completed your graduation. That means this get name is a friend. He's a probably a faculty member who is still in touch with you, right? So that forms a closure. When you get the access to the private property of a function, even after the execution of the function is over, that forms a closure. I hope this concept of closure is clear. Now what we do is let's see the output. What is the output of this? So we call this XYZ and we are making an alert. Let's save this. It should say name is ACADGILD. Let's save this and see the output. I go here and refresh. Okay, let's see, nothing is happening. Okay, there is some problem. Let's check. So XYZ we called here. It goes inside and it returns get name. Okay, it's just returning get name. So what we have to do is we have to write some temp equals, yeah. So what this will return? This will return a function. That means in temp we will get one function. We can call the function using temp. Okay. So at line number 50, what I am doing? We have called this function xyz, and what xyz does? It returns another function. And what was that function? This getName function. Okay. And it is containing the reference to the local variable. That means after this function is returned, it will return getName function, and this getName function will be assigned to this variable temp. Okay. And how to call a function? Simply using temp and then this parenthesis. Let's save this and see. I go here and refresh. Yeah, it's coming. Name is ACADGILD. Right? Now you got the access to a private variable of a function even after the function has returned. Right? Because even after the function has returned, because what this function has returned as a, it has returned as a function which is having reference to the local variable. So that is why it is not giving a name is undefined, right? Because garbage collector knows that there is still a reference to this name. That is why it has not garbage collected this value. Otherwise, if there was no reference, it would have cleared off that value. All right. So that is called as a closure. That means this function is a closure function. If we go to the theory, yeah, a closure takes place when a function creates an environment. That means a function, this is the function xyz, this function creates an environment. What kind of environment? That binds local variable to it in such a way that they are kept alive even after the function has returned. Right? When we are calling this function, if it was a normal function, this name would have been garbage collected. But during the execution of this function, it has created an environment that binds this local variable. Okay, in such a way that they are kept alive. It is kept alive, yes. Even we are able to guess this name at line number 51, even though the function has returned, right? So that's a closure. And a closure is a special kind of object that combines two things: a function which you return and any local variable that were in scope. Local variables that were in scope. This was a local variable which was in scope of this function at the time that the closure was created. Okay, so that forms a closure. So wherever you want a local variable to still persist in memory even after the function has returned, you make use of closures. And JavaScript and so many languages are full of closures. You use closures extensively. Even you do not know, still you are using closures. Okay, so this is the closure example. This looks the same which we have done, right? So let's move on to the assignments of today's session. Let's see what all assignments we have for today. Okay, so what you have to do is you have to create this dual list. This is the first assignment. This is a multi-select drop down here. You can see here, right? And then there are 4 buttons. What this button does, this button and this button. When you select the values from this drop down, what this will do, it will put the selected values from this drop down to the second drop down. Okay, similarly, if you select some of the values from second drop down and click on this button, those values will come to first drop down. Okay, and what the first and last button does, if you click on this button, first button, all the values from here, no matter whether they are selected or not, all the values from here will be put into the second drop down. Similarly, if you click on this button, all the values from the second drop down will come into the first drop down. All right, so this is the first assignment which you have to implement. And yeah, problem statement says you have to implement this with a closure. I don't see any need of a closure here. You can directly implement it first. Okay, you do not try. Yeah, if you want you can try, but I don't see a need here. So you can simply try, like take the values from here and put them to the second one. Similarly, second one, put them to the first one. Okay, first you try with these buttons, second and third button, and once you're done with that, then go with the first and fourth button, because first and fourth button will be very easy. You just have to do is you have to take all the values from the first drop down and put them into the second one, and similarly vice versa for the last one. From second drop down, take all the values, render them in the first drop down. So this is the first assignment which you have to do. Let's see second one. Yeah, so second one says write a closure in which outer function that has a parameter. Okay, that means outer function will be having one parameter and is used by inner function. This parameter which is in the outer function will be used by inner function, and inner function will also have one parameter. Okay, that means first parameter is accepted by outer function, and then there will be an inner function, and inner function also accepts one parameter. And operation performed by inner function, what the inner function will be doing, it will return the multiplication of both the parameter values. Okay, inner function will return the multiplication of both the parameters which are accepted in inner and outer function. Okay, and then call the function and alert the multiplication produced by the closure. Okay, so you have to call the closure function and alert the multiplication value. All right. So you have to, suppose you pass 2 and 3 value. So what you get after the return, you get 6. Okay. So you have to implement by inner functions. All right. Let's take a look at next assignment. So third one. Yeah. So third one says create a object type person. You have to create one object which contains first name, last name, email, and phone number, all the 4 properties. And using JavaScript, you have to append these properties to a appropriate place in HTML document. This is pretty simple. Create one object which contains 4 properties and then append those properties in the HTML. Okay. So this is nowhere related to a closure or inner function. This is more of a JavaScript. So this is the third assignment. Let's see fourth one. So fourth problem statement says create a simple nested function in which inner function is not accessible outside the outer function. Just alert the values from the function. Okay. So what you have to do is you have to create one outer function, create one inner function with one condition that inner function should not be accessible outside the outer function. All right. So you have to basically break the concept of a closure, or you have to stop the access of the inner function outside the outer function. Okay, simply call the inner function inside, from the inside of outer function. All right. So this is the last assignment, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. Yeah. So this is the fourth assignment which you have to do. You have to stop the access of inner function outside the outer function. All right. So these are the 4 assignments which you have to complete by the next session. All right. So we are done with today's session. If anyone has any doubts. All clear to everybody? Okay, so Om is asking how we will create the data list. Yes, so what you have to do is you can simply use multi-select dropdown. Okay, you can search, you will get it easily. You need not to render the dynamic data. You can simply use the option, select, and then the option. You can write 4 or 5 options inside it. All right. And yeah, multi drop down, you have to see how to make it a multiple select. Okay. Are these assignments available in dashboard? Santosh asking. Yeah, you should be able to access these assignments through dashboard. And if you feel you are not able to find the assignments, you just write a mail to me, and you can keep support@acadgild.com in CC, or you can keep me in CC and send to support. You will get the assignments in mail. Yeah. Okay. Okay, then thanks for joining. We can close the call.